You know that feeling, right? When you're in an organization that's just constantly pushing. Everyone's working harder, launching new projects, but it feels like you're all just spinning your wheels. It's this universal struggle. So let's get into it, because what if the secret to actually achieving more isn't about doing more at all? What if it's the exact opposite?
Okay, first, let's start with a number that is, frankly, pretty shocking. When you look across almost any industry, the chronic failure rate for big organizational projects and new initiatives is somewhere between 60 and 90%. No, that's not a typo. The vast majority of all that effort, all that planning, it's just not working.
And that leads to this really fundamental question. One that I'm sure you've asked yourself before. Why does it feel like the more force we apply, the more projects we pile on, the harder we try to control everything, the worse things actually get? It's this super frustrating paradox. And today, we're going to unpack it.
That crazy failure rate, up to 90%, it isn't just a series of unlucky breaks. It's a huge red flag. It's a symptom that points to something much deeper. We fundamentally misunderstood what leverage really is and where we can actually find it inside our organizations.
And here's the absolute heart of the issue. We're all chasing leverage, right? That perfect spot where a little bit of effort creates a massive impact. But the problem is we're looking for it in all the wrong places. We're trying to apply force where it just creates more drag and more resistance.
To really get why that is, we have to look at this core assumption that's kind of baked into how most companies are run. We treat them like they're simple machines, but the truth is they act way more like complex, living systems. And that one little distinction, well, it changes absolutely everything.
And this visual just nails the difference. On the left, you've got the isolated approach. It's our default setting, right? It's mechanical, all gears and levers, totally focused on optimizing one little piece at a time. But then look to the right. That's nature's model. It's this interconnected, adaptive web where the relationships between the parts are what really matter.
Let's break that down a bit. The isolated, machine approach is why we get silos and teams competing against each other, because we're just optimizing for our own little KPIs. But nature's approach, that's all about orchestrating the relationships, making sure information flows smoothly so that coordination just kind of emerges. And here's the mind bender. In this model, complexity isn't the enemy. It's actually the source of your adaptive power.
So this brings us to the core of this whole thing. The really counterintuitive and, let's be honest, paradoxical solution. If pushing harder is the problem, then the answer has to be in a totally different direction. The answer is found in the power of doing less.
This just debunks all our usual assumptions. When we see a company that's crushing it, we think, oh, they must have more money, smarter people, or a better strategy. But the real difference is way more subtle. It's all about how the system itself is built to perceive and integrate signals from the world around it.
This quote right here gets to the heart of it all. I want you to just let that sink in for a second. The biggest impact you can have doesn't come from pushing harder on the same old levers. It comes from fundamentally changing what the organization pays attention to and how it pays attention.
Okay, so how in the world do you reorganize attention? Well, here's the paradoxical solution broken down into 3 steps. First, do less. Just stop. Stop adding more projects. Stop overloading the system. Step 2, remove noise. Get rid of all those conflicting priorities and confusing messages that just drain everyone's energy. And third, let gradients emerge. Basically, create the conditions where the most important work becomes obvious and easy for people to rally around.
All right, that sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? How do you do that? This brings us to the hands-on toolkit. 5 specific levers you can actually adjust to build this kind of systemic health or coherence. And we find these levers in a place you probably wouldn't expect, in our everyday negotiations. The whole goal here is to make it easier for everyone to see the landscape of opportunities and trade-offs. By tweaking 5 simple parameters in how we negotiate with each other, we can turn what used to be points of friction into these super high-leverage moments for the entire system.
So the first lever is scope and participants. This is super simple, really. It's just about being crystal clear on who actually needs to be in the conversation. Which teams, which people, which value streams are actually impacted by this thing we're talking about. Getting that boundary right from the start is absolutely essential.
Second up, contribution rules. Think of these as the rules of the game. What can people actually bring to the table? Is it budget? Is it people's time? Is it their expertise? Defining these rules clearly isn't about killing creativity, it's about making sure everyone understands how they can contribute effectively.
Okay, number 3 is a bit of a mouthful. Coupling capabilities and coherence calibration. Let's just simplify that. Coupling just means connecting our actions to their consequences. It's about making trade-offs really explicit. If we do this, what happens over there? This lever makes sure those downstream effects are visible to everyone, and it even gives us clear off-ramps if a deal stops making sense.
Lever number 4 is all about transparency and observability. The big question here is everyone looking at the same map? Do they all have a clear view of the resources we have, the risks we're facing, and the actual freedom they have to make decisions? When everyone sees the same landscape, you just eliminate so much needless confusion and conflict.
And finally, number 5 is timing and cadence. This is all about building a learning loop directly into how you work. How often do we check in? How are our work cycles structured so we can actually stop, reflect on what's working, and adjust our approach? This is what ensures the system is constantly adapting and getting smarter over time.
Now, when you start to really tune these 5 levers, something amazing happens. The entire vibe of the organization starts to shift. You're not just managing a machine anymore, you're starting to cultivate a living system.
And this means a leader's role fundamentally changes. You stop managing fragmentation, running around putting out fires and fixing broken pieces, and you start stewarding coherence. Your job becomes about tending to the overall health of the system and the quality of the connections within it.
And the results of making this shift, they're huge. The cost of coordination just plummets because alignment becomes natural instead of forced. The speed of innovation goes way up because people have clarity and the autonomy to act. You get distributed accountability, resilience as you grow, and your team's capabilities start to build on each other, compounding over time.
And let's not forget the people. Leaders are liberated from that constant firefighting. They're free. Employees feel empowered because they have real autonomy and a clear sense of purpose. What you're creating is an organization that doesn't just perform, it actually regenerates itself.
So we'll end on this final thought, which is really the big takeaway. This isn't about willpower. It's not about just working harder. It's about design. The systems we work in make certain behaviors easy and other behaviors hard. So if you really want different results, stop trying to push against the grain. Change the structure itself. Change what your system makes easy.